Welcome to Efiwe, excellence without stress.
Welcome guys to Efiwe, excellence without stress. I'm Miss Favor, your use of English teacher, and I am happy to be here. He fell senseless to the ground. Look at the word senseless. Usually senseless would mean without sense or stupidly. Like when you say somebody is senseless, or you mean they don't have sense, they are without sense, or they are acting stupidly. But here, within this context, senseless does not mean without sense or stupidly. It means a state of unconsciousness. So you see, we have not judged this word based on its individual meaning. We've judged it based on what we call contextual meaning. And this is part of what we are required to do in comprehension. That will lead us to our topic for today. Today we're going to look at comprehension in English language. So let's get right into it. In comprehension, what are we expected to do when we find comprehension question? What comprehension simply does is that it judges the learner's understanding of a given passage. So how well do you understand what you have read? That is what we are required to do in comprehension. Now let's look at some of these tips for answering Jamb comprehension questions. The first one is that you read through the questions first. Now remember that you don't have all the time. If we did have all the time, I would have suggested, okay, read the passage first, then come and look at the question and go back to the passage again. But remember that you're writing a timed exam. So just scan through the questions. What this helps you to do is that it gives you a level of expectation. So it gives you clues. When you see some of the keywords, you know what you're looking out for while you're reading the comprehension. So read through the questions first. Then read the passage. When you're done reading the passage, go back to the question. Now you've already read the passage, so it now gives you clarity. So go back to read the questions again. And now you can come back and pick the correct option based on the information you found in the passage. Remember, it is comprehension, and what is being tested is your knowledge, your understanding of the passage that you've read. So you must pick the option that is correct based on the information. Now, it's also important to note that sometimes there are options that may look similar. So it is your understanding of the passage that you've read that will help you to pick the correct option. So now let's look at some of the general comprehension passage questions we may find in our exams. Firstly, there are questions that require you to look for the main idea and title of a passage. So some of these questions are centered on the theme. What is the speaker's general idea? Some other questions are questions on speaker's tone. So now you're to discern the speaker's attitude. And is it speaking from a concerned tone? Is it a non-committal voice? Is the speaker annoyed? What type? So you're discerning the speaker's attitude from what you've read. Now the other questions that require you to find what we call the contextual meaning of words. Like we saw in the first example, he fell senseless to the ground. So now in contextual meaning, you're not looking for the meaning outside the passage. You're not going to say, because this is what senseless originally means, that means this is what it means here. So you're going to look for the meaning of words based on the sentence, based on the passage that you've been given. And there are questions that require you to find what we call implied meaning. That means you're looking for, now what you're looking for is inferential. The speaker did not state it. They are not facts. They are not obvious. So you're looking for a message beneath what has been written. There are also questions that require details of facts. So all you have to do in those type of questions is that you just go back to see exactly what the speaker has said. Now they are requiring details, not your opinion, not inferential meaning, not what is implied, but details of facts. Let's look at this comprehension. Remember that the first rule is that we read our questions first. So let's move to our questions. Question 1. Humane as used in the passage means dash. Question 2, we must consciously try to establish an equilibrium. That's in line 8. Implies that mankind must dash. Question 3, the main idea of this passage is that nature is heartless, man should control the birth rate, mankind will soon perish of starvation, pestilence causes more death than war. Question 4, the author observes that war, pestilence and famine were caused by the extravagance of nature. Now see, from all these questions we already know that we have something to do with nature here. That is the kind of clue I was referring to. So this is what reading the question first helps you to do. Nature was heartless and senseless. There was a time when uncontrolled birth made sense. D, it was at a time when mankind did not interfere with normal production. So let's go back to our passage quickly. All over the world till lately, and in most of the world still today, mankind has been following the course of nature. That is to say, it has been breeding up to the maximum. To let nature take her extravagant course in the reproduction of the human race may have made sense in an age in which we were also letting her take her course in decimating mankind by the casualties of war, pestilence and famine. Being human, we have at last revolted against that senseless waste. We started to impose on heartless play a humane new order of our own. But when once man has begun to interfere with nature, he cannot afford to stop halfway. We cannot with impunity cut down the death rate and at the same time allow the birth rate to go on taking course. We must consciously try to establish an equilibrium, or sooner or later famine will stalk abroad again. So let's go back to our questions. Question 1, humane as used in the passage means dash. A, sensible. B, wise. C, human. D, benevolent. E, thorough. Now you see, we are looking for the contextual meaning of humane. Let's go back. We started to impose on heartless play a humane new order of our own. Now, based on the passage, usually humane would mean benevolent. It will mean kind. It will mean being good. But humane here means wise. B, wise. So you see that we began the discussion on this whole discussion is how that man should be wise enough to not let nature take its course on birth rates. So if we are intentional about cutting down death rates, we should also use the same intentionality to cut down birth rates so that famine will not stalk again. So here, humane means wise. The correct option is option B. Let's look at question 2. We must consciously try to establish an equilibrium. This quote is gotten from line 8. It implies that mankind must be dash. A, realistically find an equation. B, strive not to be wasteful. C, deliberately try to fight nature. D, try to fight nature. E, purposely find a balance. The correct answer is E. Mankind must be intentional about finding a balance between both birth rates and death rates. Question 3, the main idea. You see, now we're looking at the main idea. So the main idea of this passage is that this question is simply asking, this entire passage, what is it about? A, nature is heartless. No. B, man should control the birth rate. C, mankind will soon perish of starvation. No. D, pestilence causes more death than war. The correct option is option B. The main idea, the central idea of this passage is that man should control the birth rate. Question 4, the author observes that A, war, pestilence and famine were caused by the extravagance of nature. B, nature was heartless and senseless. C, there was a time when uncontrolled birth made sense. D, it was it was wise at a time when mankind did not interfere with normal reproduction. Here, this question is simply asking for details of facts. That means that the correct answer is option C. There was a time when uncontrolled birth made sense. Let's look at this comprehension 2, but let's go to our questions first. According to this passage, it gives the little child great pleasure to do what? Now, this question is asking for details. Question 2, what other feeling does the child derive from the fall of his star apart from pleasure? We already know now. We are getting clues. We've seen tower, we've seen child. Question 3, how does the author try to explain this destructive stage? In quotes. So there's something called destructive stage that we are going to look out for. This is a clue when we start reading the passage. 4, the expression must kick it and make it collapse in this context means dash. 5, in the passage, manic pleasure means dash. So we've read the questions now and they've given us clues. So let's go back to our comprehension. Comprehension. In order to approach the problem of anxiety in play, let us consider the activity of building and destroying a tower. Many a mother thinks that her little son is in a destructive stage or even has a destructive personality, because after building a big tower, the boy cannot follow her advice to leave the tower for daddy to see, but instead must kick it and make it collapse. The almost manic pleasure with which children watch the collapse in a second of the product of long play labor has puzzled many, especially since the child does not appreciate it at all if his tower falls by accident or by a helpful uncle's hand. He, the builder, must destroy it himself. This game, I should think, arises from the not so distant experience of sudden falls at the very time when standing upright on wobbly legs afforded a new and fascinating perspective on his existence. The child who consequently learns to make a tower stand up enjoys causing the same tower to waver and collapse. In addition to the active mastery over a previously passive event, it makes one feel stronger to know that there is somebody weaker. Towers, unlike little sister, can't cry and call mommy. Now let's look at our questions. Question 1. According to this passage, it gives the little child great pleasure to do what? A. For daddy to see the tower he has built. No. B. To destroy the tower himself. C. To see his tower accidentally destroyed. D. To be helped to destroy the tower. Now we are just stating details here. The correct option is option B. It gives, according to the passage, it gives the little child great pleasure to destroy the tower himself. That's what we read. So it gives this child pleasure, and that's why he will not wait for his daddy to see. He prefers to destroy it himself rather than destroy it accidentally or by a helpful uncle's hand. Question 2. What other feeling does the child derive from the fall of his tower apart from pleasure? A. Strength. B. Anxiety. C. Pity. D. Depression. The correct option is option A. Strength, and this is stated in the passage. Question 3. How does the author try to explain this destructive stage? A. It is the last stage in child development. B. The child wants to displease his parents. C. It grows out of the child's recent experience of sudden falls. D. The child is just going through a destructive stage. The correct option is option C. It grows out of the child's recent experience of sudden falls. Question 4. The expression must kick it and make it collapse in this context means dash. A. Is forced to kick it and demolish it. B. Is obliged to kick it and make it collapse. C. Cannot resist the urge to demolish it. D. Ought to kick it and make it collapse. The correct option is option C. The child cannot resist the urge to demolish it. In question 5, in the passage, manic pleasure means dash. A. Wicked pleasure. B. Childish pleasure. C. Unlimited pleasure. D. Human pleasure. The correct option is option A. Wicked pleasure. So let's go over quickly to our comprehension tree. Now you already know that the way we do is that first of all we look at the questions. So let's look at these questions. Question A, it is advisable that one should rest dash. So we're already looking at rest. The options: once there's a feeling of tiredness, there's no longer interest in the task. C, there's onset of physiological changes in the body. D, the task becomes difficult. 2, definite limitation used to describe the human body in the passage means that. So we already have clues. Rest, definite limitation. Let's go over quickly to our passage. Everyone is tired or fatigued at some time. The major cycle in your life is work, fatigue, and rest, in that order. Fatigue is characteristic of your body. It does not occur in a man-made machine which operates as long as its parts are intact and it has for. But your body, a living machine, has a definite limitation. Its work continues. It gradually loses its responsiveness, becomes less irritable, turns out less work, and finally may not respond at all. The feeling of fatigue usually expresses itself in 3 ways. First, there is a feeling of tiredness and a marked desire for rest. Second, efficiency is greatly reduced. Third, there may be definite physiological changes in your body: low blood pressure, loss of muscle tone, tremors, and poor muscular coordination. And in other ways, fatigue, however, may express itself in many ways, for there are many different forms of it. The fatigue of a student, for example, who has worked all evening on a difficult lesson, is different from that of a laborer who has worked all day at a back-breaking task, or that of a business executive who worries with the stress and strain of organization. Now let's look at our questions. 1. It is advisable that one should rest one's dash. A. There is a feeling of tiredness. B. There is no longer interest in the task. C. There is onset of physiological changes in the body. D. The task becomes difficult. Now this kind of question, we are not stating facts, so this meaning is implied. So from what we read in the passage, it's advisable, the correct option is A, that one should rest once there's a feeling of tiredness. How do I know this? Now we see that the feeling of fatigue from this passage expresses itself in 3 ways. First, there is a feeling of tiredness. So you do not wait till there is an onset of physiological changes in your body. So you rest once there is a feeling of tiredness. This is an implied meaning. Question 2, definite limitation used to describe the human body in the passage means that A. The body cannot be made to work continuously like a machine. B. The body should only perform simple tasks. C. Body parts must be limited. D. The body is equal to man-made machines. The correct option is option A. The body cannot be made to work continuously like a machine. That is what definite limitation means in this sentence. That will bring us to the end of our lesson on comprehension. Now, all you have to do to answer more comprehension questions is to just download the Efiwe app and you will be good to go. Thank you for watching.